year was 1934, and Cleveland was a city in transition. The Great Depression had left thousands destitute, huddling in shantytowns along the Cuyahoga River, where crime and desperation festered in equal measure. But no one could have anticipated the horror that was about to descend upon the city. It began with a single discovery: a mutilated corpse washing ashore along the shores of Lake Erie. The body was a gruesome spectacle, the head missing, the torso cleanly bisected at the waist. The killer, whoever he was, had taken care to drain the body of blood, leaving behind a lifeless husk that defied identification. The newspapers were quick to sensationalize the find, dubbing the unknown murderer the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. But this was only the beginning. Over the next 4 years, more bodies would emerge, each more gruesome than the last. The police, baffled by the precision and savagery of the crimes, struggled to keep up. Each victim was beheaded, their torsos severed with surgical precision, often showing signs of chemical treatment. These weren't the acts of a common criminal. This was something far more sinister. As the number of victims grew, so did the fear. Cleveland residents locked their doors at night, whispering about the shadowy killer who seemed to strike without warning. With no witnesses, no clear pattern among the victims, and no identifiable suspect, the police faced an impossible challenge. Even more disturbing was the realization that the victims were often the city's most vulnerable: transients, drifters, and the homeless, people who could disappear without anyone noticing. The killer had chosen his prey well. By 1936, the body count had reached 6, and the city was gripped by hysteria. Each new discovery painted the same horrifying picture: headless corpses, torsos surgically severed, sometimes missing limbs. The forensic evidence was confounding. The cuts were clean, precise, almost as if performed by someone with medical knowledge. This led investigators to a chilling theory. The killer could be a doctor, a butcher, or even someone trained in dissection. But despite this insight, they remained no closer to identifying him. The victims had little in common aside from their transient lifestyles. Some were male, others female, and none carried any form of identification. The police could do little more than number the victims, labeling them Victim No. 1, Victim No. 2, and so on. In September 1936, 2 more bodies were discovered near the East 55th Street Bridge. One of the victims, a man, had been decapitated with such skill that investigators believed the killer had used a finely honed blade. The other, a woman, was dismembered beyond recognition. This latest discovery forced Cleveland authorities to take drastic action. The city's newly appointed safety director, Eliot Ness, already famous for taking down Al Capone, was brought in to lead the investigation. Ness, known for his relentless pursuit of justice, was determined to bring the murderer to justice. He ordered a crackdown on Kingsbury Run, sending officers into the shantytowns, interrogating suspects, and tearing apart makeshift homes in search of clues. But despite these efforts, the killer remained elusive, his identity a terrifying enigma. Ness, frustrated by the lack of progress, took drastic steps to flesh out the killer. In a controversial move, he ordered the burning of Kingsbury Run's shantytowns, hoping to drive the murderer into the open. The move was widely criticized. Many saw it as an act of desperation rather than strategy. But even as the flames consumed the encampments, the killer remained at large. Then, in 1938, a breakthrough, or so it seemed. A suspect emerged: Dr. Francis E. Sweeney, a skilled surgeon with a history of alcoholism and mental instability. Sweeney was given a polygraph test, which he reportedly failed in spectacular fashion. But despite the damning results, no concrete evidence linked him to the crimes. Ness, convinced of his guilt, was unable to bring charges against him. Sweeney was later committed to a mental institution, where he remained until his death. But whether he was truly the Mad Butcher remains a matter of speculation. Even with Sweeney effectively removed from society, the killings did not cease. More bodies surfaced, each bearing the same horrifying trademarks. The police, exhausted and out of leads, had no choice but to let the case go cold. The official death toll stood at 12, though some believe the true number could be as high as 20. Decades have passed, but the Cleveland torso murders remain one of the most chilling, unsolved crimes in American history. The case continues to intrigue and horrify true crime enthusiasts, with theories ranging from the plausible to the absurd. Some believe Sweeney was indeed the killer, while others argue that the Butcher of Kingsbury Run was never caught at all. Could he have moved to another city, continuing his gruesome work elsewhere? Or did he simply stop, content with the terror he had wrought? Forensic advancements have shed new light on historical crimes, but the torso murders remain as baffling today as they were in the 1930s. Without DNA evidence, without witnesses, and with many of the key players long dead, the mystery endures. What is certain is that the Butcher of Kingsbury Run operated with a terrifying blend of skill and sadism, choosing his victims carefully, dispatching them with methodical precision, and leaving behind a legacy of fear that haunts Cleveland to this day. The Cleveland torso murders have inspired books, documentaries, and endless speculation. The killings predated the modern era of criminal profiling, making the case a landmark study in forensic investigation. Some experts believe that the Butcher was a forerunner to later serial killers, laying the blueprint for the horrors that would come in later decades. Others see the case as a grim reminder of how some crimes simply defy resolution. Eliot Ness, despite his decorated career, was never able to solve the case, and it remains a black mark on his otherwise illustrious legacy. To this day, the identity of the Mad Butcher is unknown, his motives unexplained, and his methods unmatched in their brutality. His victims, forgotten by time, still cry out for justice. But justice, it seems, will never come. As the years pass, the legend of the Cleveland torso murderer continues to grow. He is a specter from the past, a nightmare that refuses to fade. And as long as the mystery remains unsolved, he will continue to haunt the darkened alleyways of history, an eternal enigma lurking just beyond the reach of the light. The Cleveland torso murders remain an open wound in the annals of true crime. The case stands as a reminder of the limits of law enforcement, the cruelty of the unknown, and the psychological grip that unsolved mysteries hold on the human mind. Whether the Butcher was a lone predator or part of a larger, undetected network, his crimes remain a terrifying puzzle. Until the day definitive answers emerge, if they ever do, the Butcher's shadow will continue to loom over Cleveland, a dark specter of an unfinished nightmare.